Okay, boys and girls, the time for excuses is over. An ambient guitar album in 6 weeks. Let's do this together. Yes, I have a goal to create and release an ambient guitar EP of 5 songs in the next 6 weeks, and I thought it would be a lot of fun for all of you to join me for the journey and hopefully create your own ambient guitar EP. It would be awesome if we could come out of this process with a lot of great new ambient guitar music. So let's get started with week 1. This will be a week of preparation. The first thing to think about is recording your audio. Now, depending on the equipment you have, it could be very simple or a little bit more elaborate. So, for example, if you want to do an ambient guitar album of acoustic guitar, it could be as simple as sitting down with your iPhone in front of your guitar and just recording the audio and then airdropping it into your laptop or your desktop machine for mixing and processing. Okay. You could also use a very simple USB interface. I've got one called a Focusrite Scarlett, and it works great. There are many other brands that also work great for just simple audio capture. If you've already got a studio, use what you have. Part B of capturing audio, if you're playing electric guitar, is are you going to go direct? Or are you going to use a mic on an amp? So you'll need to decide that and get that equipment together and kind of figure out how to get, again, your audio into your computer. The next thing you'll need to consider is recording software. Again, if you don't already have a studio. I am a Mac-based kind of guy for audio and video, so I use Logic Pro. Also on the Mac is a really great free program called GarageBand, if you're not familiar with that. They're both GarageBand and Logic are awesome for the Mac platform. I'm not quite as familiar with software anymore on the Windows side, but I used to use Reaper quite a bit on the Windows platform, and it's a wonderful piece of software. I'll provide a link to it in the description below. If you don't like Reaper, there are many other options for Windows. The next thing to consider are constraints. If you don't put constraints and limitations on your project, it's not going to get done. I find a lot of freedom in limiting what I'm doing as I start a recording project. So what are our constraints for this project? Well, the first thing is the number of songs. We're going to limit it to 5 songs. If you blow through the 5 songs and you want to do a stretch assignment into more, awesome. But limit to 5 songs. The next constraint that I would suggest is to limit yourself to 1 or at most 2 tracks of audio or synthesizer. Obviously, the primary track is going to be 1 track of your guitar. The second track can be a second guitar, a synthesizer, percussion, whatever you wish, but only 2 tracks. The next constraint is related to only doing 2 tracks of audio. So here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to have 1 track of the guitar kind of riding on top. Track number 2 is just going to be a simple drone. And I'm going to change up the tonality, the pitch of the drone for each track. Okay, so maybe track number 1, I'll be playing in the key of D. So I'll have a drone just of a low D note. Track 2, maybe it's in the key of G. I'll have a drone of a G, and maybe I'll have a different tonality. If I'm using a synthesizer, maybe I'll put some sequencing on it to kind of change up the rhythm, that type of thing. But make your tracks 1 main guitar with an underlying drone. This is really important, I think, for this project. We want to keep things simple, easy to execute to ensure that we can get the EP done in 6 weeks. Final constraint. What I want you to do with whatever equipment you have is set up an effects chain for your guitar, so that main guitar track, and stick with the same basic effects chain. Okay, don't go swapping pedals or plugins for each track. Get one effects chain that you really like and stick with it. So I haven't quite decided on mine yet, but here are some of the components that I'm going to include in my effects chain. Obviously the guitar, and I'll pick one guitar. Okay, I'm not going to switch guitars. I'm going to pick one guitar to do this thing on, and that's going to go into a compressor. That's going to go into my amp modeling unit, so that might be the Line 6 HX Stomp or the Headrush pedal board or maybe even my old 11 rack. I'll decide that this week. And then from there, I'm going to use my volume pedal, and I'm going to select 2 delays and 1 reverb. I'm going to put them all together into an effects chain, and I'm going to leave it as it is for the entire album. So you do the same thing, figure out a good effects chain and just leave it alone. Now, let me just mention, as you do create each song, you are allowed to change the parameters of the pedals or the plugins in your effects chain, okay? So if you want a short delay on one piece and a real long delay on another piece, go for it. It's fine. Just don't unplug your pedals. Leave them set up as is. All right, we've got kind of the technical thing out of the way. We've got our constraints, the parameters around our album out of the way. So what's left? Well, composition. What are we going to do for composition? Well, I have a suggestion for you, and that I'm going to fall back to one of my favorite techniques, and that is to use some traditional public domain songs as the basis for my compositions. So in my case, I've mentioned this before, I love the old school hymns, like that old crusty, rusty stuff that people used to sing in churches all over the place, right? Some of those hymn tunes are really beautiful, and in fact, many of them are folk tunes. So for me, that's a really rich resource for getting ideas for compositions. Do you enjoy traditional music of different types? Maybe it's Celtic music. Maybe if you're from another culture or country, maybe it's the traditional music of your culture or country. Maybe there's songs that you know or knew as a child. Anyhow, use familiar tunes as the basis for your composition. This will give you a head start and a leg up on creating the music that you're going to record. All right, there you go. Some thoughts for preparing for your ambient guitar album. I'm going to give you 7 days this whole week, so take advantage of it. Also, let's get a conversation going in the video comments below. If you've got questions or thoughts, post them there. If you've already done this and you have advice for the rest of us, post it there too. Let's talk about it and help each other along the way. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe and hit the bell notification. That way you'll be alerted as to when new videos in this series post, and that will be on Mondays at noon Eastern Time. I am so looking forward to working with all of you through these next 6 weeks and making some great music. See all of you on the next video.